All right. Good morning. It's time to call the meeting to order for the February 19 meeting of the Montecito Planning Commission. Let's all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll have our TV coverage announcement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the Commission. Montecito Planning Commission hearings are televised live on County of Santa Barbara Television, CSBTV, Channel 20 at 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, San Ynez Valley, Santa Maria, and Orchid areas. Rebroadcasts of Montecito Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays at 5 p.m. on CSBTV Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and will be available for download in a day or two. Would you like me to proceed to the roll call?
All right, please.
All right. Commissioner Keller.
Present.
Commissioner Kupiec.
Here.
Commissioner Stenauer.
Here.
Commissioner Puliche.
Here.
And Chair Newman.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, going on to our third agenda item for the election of the 2020 Montecito Planning Commission Chair, First Chair, Vice Chair, and Second Chair. Commissioner Kupiec.
I would like to nominate Donna Stenauer as the chair.
Sorry, did you mean to say first Vice Chair?
No, chairman.
Chairperson, all right. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
All right, discussion. Commissioner Stenauer?
No.
Okay, any discussion?
All I wanted to say is that I was sorry I was unable to be here last month, and maybe we should consider it as a commission policy that we not have elections until all the commissioners can be present, because it then allows for a majority vote, and it's, I think, important to have that consensus. So just for the record, I would like to say I would hope that in the future we would have elections when all the commissioners could be present, and I'm sorry I was unable to be here. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? All right, it's been moved and seconded that Donna Stenauer serve as chair for 2020. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Keller.
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiec.
Aye.
Commissioner Stenauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Puliche.
Aye.
And Chair Newman.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, why don't we take a moment to recess, and we'll literally move the chairs around.
So we move on to nominations for first vice chair. Do we have any
Yes,
recommendations?
I would like to nominate Commissioner Kupiec for first vice chair.
Do we have a second?
Yes, I will second that for Bob.
Any discussion? If we could have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiec,
Aye.
Commissioner Newman,
Aye.
Commissioner Police,
Aye.
and Chair Sanauer.
Aye,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. And now moving forward, if we could have nominations for second vice chair going forward. Any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Ron Police.
Thanks.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? No? Could we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Keller, Commissioner Kupiec, Commissioner Newman,
Aye.
Commissioner Police,
Aye.
and Chair Sanauer.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moving on, we have the agenda status report, I believe. Thank you. Oh, no, excuse. Appointment of the 2020 Montecito Planning Commission Secretary and Recording Secretary. Do we have nominations, please? First, the Planning Commission Secretary.
I believe that it's our position to nominate David Villalobos in that position.
So we have two positions, one as secretary and one as recording secretary, and I'm sure Mr. Wilson would love to lighten his workload a little bit, but I would suggest that you nominate Mr. Wilson as secretary.
Sorry, the subtlety
Thank
of the titles escaped me. I would nominate Jeff Wilson as secretary. Secretary, yes, thank you.
Any seconds, please?
I would second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Moving forward, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Keller.
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiec.
Wholeheartedly aye.
Commissioner Newman.
Aye.
Commissioner Police.
Aye.
And Chair Sanauer.
Yes, for sure.
Motion passes 5-0.
And we are now advancing to nominations for recording secretary, is that correct? Yes, so moving forward, do we have a nomination, please?
I have my light on and I don't see, oh yes, there it is. I would like to nominate Mr. Villalobos for the recording secretary.
And do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, moving forward, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Keller.
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiec.
Aye.
Commissioner Newman.
Aye.
Commissioner Police. And Chair Sanauer. Motion passes 5-0.
Now we are, is this correct, at the agenda status report. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Congratulations, Madam Chair and first and second Vice Chair. The status of the agenda today is we have on the agenda the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report, as well as the standard agenda item of the Thomas Fire and Debris Flow Statistics Report. And then we also have on the second item on the agenda is the Montecito Fire Protection District, a briefing on the 2020 Fire Code updates. That's the agenda, and staff is prepared and ready to present on those items.
Thank you. Projection report is next.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, our next meeting is scheduled for March 18th. On that date, we have the Long Range Planning Division will be presenting their work program to the Montecito Planning Commission. And then the next hearing after that is April 15th. At this time, we don't have anything projected for that date. And then the other dates is May 20th. There are no items projected for those dates. However, I think the director's report will indicate there is a project moving forward. It won't be probably ready by April or May, but there's a development plan that was submitted for the debris nets that will be coming later on this year. But other than that, I recommend just keeping those dates until February, and then if no items are on the projection report in February or March, sorry, we're in February already. In March, then we can take any action as far as whether to continue those meetings or to cancel them. That concludes the projection report.
Thank you very much. Do we have comment?
I have a question. Jeff, I thought we were going to hear something regarding the roundabouts this first quarter or second quarter. Is that coming up?
Commissioner Police, through the chair, are you referring to a briefing or the actual project coming before you?
The actual project.
At this time, I don't have a date of when that project will be coming
Okay.
forward. I know it's currently in the works, and it's scheduled to come sometime this year, but I don't know if it's going to be, it won't be in March because it's already been, we've been on the projection report already.
Thank you.
And I can update you at the next hearing.
Commissioner Keller?
It's my understanding that it will go before the MBAR before it comes to us. Is that correct? And has that been scheduled?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, at this time, I don't have a date of when it's scheduled for MBAR. But
Okay.
it's my understanding that they were going to be given an opportunity to review it as well.
Thank you. Prior to our hearing it.
Chair Keller. You just got, fast forwarded.
Yes.
Yeah, Commissioner Keller. That is my understanding, that it would go to MBAR and then come before the Planning Commission.
Good, thank you.
I just also have a comment about Commissioner Police's comment about the roundabouts. I believe it has been before MBAR, conceptually on the 6th or 7th of February. And it is coming back to MBAR, although with no date proposed yet that I can find. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a request that when
Commissioner
when a
Gurria?
date is set, can you notify us? Because that's an MBAR meeting that I would very much like to attend.
Good. Thank you. All right, do we have any public, next is public comment for items not on our agenda today. Do we have any slips?
We do not have any slips, but there are public here.
Yes, and I would just like to remind folks in the audience, if you have something you'd like to speak on that is not on the agenda, you can certainly come up and do so and fill out a speaker slip after or now.
Right now.
Okay.
Right now.
Right now, great. Okay, Sharon Byrne, please. Thank you very much. And you have 3 minutes or whatever you wish, up to 4 minutes. Thank you. If you could please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. My name is Sharon Byrne. I'm the Executive Director of the Montecito Association. With me today is Doreen Johnson, who's Chair of our Land Use Committee. We just want to congratulate Chair Senauer and Vice Chair and the second Vice Chair, or Mr. Felice. Congratulations. We look forward to working with you this year. We have reviewed the roundabout in nauseating detail in the Land Use Committee and have attended some of the MBAR hearings on it as well, so we'll be watching that as it goes through. But I just want to say congratulations. Welcome to 2020, and I hope it's a very great and productive year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments not on the agenda? Great, then we close public comment right now. Thank you. Informational reports. Commissioners, do we have anything, please? Commissioner Newman.
Yes, 2 weeks ago, roughly 2 weeks ago, the Board of Supervisors at its February 4th meeting passed or approved ordinance amendments to the Montecito Fire District Building Code, the fire code in Montecito. Learning of that as an agenda item, I corresponded with the supervisors and urged that that matter be brought to us for possible review, whether it was on a courtesy basis or otherwise. I learned and was advised by counsel that that is not a matter within our purview in terms of jurisdiction, but afterwards at the suggestion of Supervisor Williams, I met with the chief of the Montecito Fire District, and the chief was only too pleased to have the fire district come today or at a convenient time to fill us in with respect to both their process and the current amendments which were approved by the Board of Supervisors. So we're going to hear from them in the agenda today. I mentioned this as an informational item because I deemed it very important, since this fire code affects Montecito and the planning area in which we have responsibility for, and I deemed it very important to us and to our community and for the community at large to be advised of the code changes, and very much regretted that it had not previously come before us as an informational or other item. So those meetings did take place.
Thank you. Any other informational reports? I attended the Montecito Water District Groundwater Sustainability Agency meeting, their strategic planning committee meeting, which was informative, and they are progressing to have a meeting for the public on February 24th in Montecito Union School, beginning at 5 for an informational public meeting on the Groundwater Sustainability Agency in Montecito. Thank you. Moving forward to minutes, please.
May I speak up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. This is a little off topic, but I think this is a very good forum in which to bring this up. I went to a recent seminar and program presented by the Santa Barbara Foundation in which there was information given about the upcoming census. And there's a great deal of concern about the potential for undercounting the population in Santa Barbara. And I was pleased to learn that there are paid positions available as census takers. And I guess this is as good a forum as any to get the word out that anybody, especially with Spanish-speaking language skills, would be paid to go house to house to make sure that there's a proper count of residents of Montecito and the Santa Barbara area, because an underreporting will cost us millions of dollars in federal support. So I just would like to urge anyone who knows people who are bilingual, who are in need of a job, who are free in the evenings to go door to door, to please pass the word. I think this is a critically important subject. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Keller. I think it is. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Any other comments for discussion, etc.? Thank you. Moving on to minutes now for the hearing of January 15th for review. Do we have any, upon review, any comments or corrections by any commissioners? Excuse me. Seeing none? Oh, excuse me. Commissioner Newman, please.
Thank you. I'm a little uncertain as to the meaning of the asterisks that appear in the minutes in a couple places, and I'm wondering if the Secretary could inform us. Do they refer to something?
No, and we can change the notation. That was just really to draw the attention to the fact that the motion was made and the motion had been withdrawn. And that was really the intent. So if you would like to notate it a different way, that's fine. That was the intent.
Okay, thank you.
So noted. Does the commission wish to make a correction regarding the asterisks, or is the wish to have them remain?
It's fine now that it's been explained.
Thank you. If we could have a motion for approval.
I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. If we could have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Keller.
Abstain.
Commissioner Kupiec.
Aye.
Commissioner Newman.
Aye.
Commissioner Police.
Aye.
And Chair Sanauer.
Aye.
Motion passes 401.
Thank you. Moving on to the director's report, Board of Supervisors hearing summary, etc. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the commission. Congratulations on the appointments. I look forward to working with you as a team this year and our staff. I want to report on a couple of things. As already mentioned earlier, there was an application submitted for an emergency permit for the debris nets before the end of the year last year. The county authorized that emergency permit to maintain the debris nets in their current locations. That was in December that emergency permit was authorized, and now we are moving forward and going to the board with a board letter to report on that emergency permit. And I don't have the date exactly, but it'll be in the next few weeks that will be up at the board. They also submitted the development plan that will allow the debris nets to remain in place for 5 years. So that is moving through the process as well now. And I'm not exactly certain when that'll be before the Planning Commission, but it'll be before the commission, I'd say, in the next few months. The debris net development plan. Oh, correct, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for reminding me. There's going to be some additional environmental review on that, so it'll take a little bit longer. And then the Montecito Sanitary District also submitted a development plan application to authorize the existing buildings that are on the site and then that had not been permitted through the county, and then also for the future development of new office space that they have plans for. So that is starting to move through the process. And I think that's it.
Commissioner Keller.
I recall that some time back when other, excuse me, when other construction was done with the sanitary district, they did come before this body just as a report for plans, and that is something I'd be most interested in if it would be accommodated by the sanitary district, just to bring us up to date on those plans. Is that something we can request as a future agenda item?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Keller, I'm not sure you want an update on their application? Or?
You know, actually, I apologize. I think it was when I was on the Board of Architectural Review that we looked at the plans for the building.
Yes.
And there's been quite a bit of controversy about this. I just feel as though it would be good if we were better informed, whether there is more detail that you could bring to us about the process, or they would be willing to give us an update on their process and the plans for the development. That would be very valuable for me.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Keller, the decision is going to be coming to you because it's a development plan application. It's not a director level, it's a planning commission level. So you will be seeing everything that is part of the permit. And we're certainly, I can ask the Montecito District if they want to come and speak to you, but we can certainly work with you to share the plans, and so you can look at them. You can come in and speak with the planner about it if you have an interest in it. But you are a decision maker on it.
Thank you. It's just best to have as much information as possible. And so it is anticipated that they will be coming to us at what point?
It's going to be several months, I think, before we figure out exactly when they'll be on the agenda.
Okay, good. It's just a matter of wanting to be informed about what's developing, and that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Newman.
Thank you. Going through minutes of the past year and looking at some of the items in our long-range plan, which we're going to discuss, I wanted to follow up with you and get a sense of where the department is on a number of items that are been before us. First, when I served as chair, we passed a resolution with respect to compensation, but I don't believe I've not seen the final resolution, not signed it. What is the status of that?
Madam Chair,
Is it gone to the board?
It's in process. Mr. Villalobos, could you provide a response?
Or maybe,
No, I'm just
maybe I'm
trying to
having a senior
recall.
moment. I did sign it, but
I thought that maybe we'd gotten that, but
okay.
I have to double check that.
Chair Steinauer, Commissioner Newman, my understanding is that it was signed immediately after that meeting. I think it was in December. Currently, we're targeting dates for that board agenda letter to be done, and so staff is currently working internally to pull some information together and have that docketed, and we're trying to anticipate looking at dates in April for that to be docketed to go before the board.
Okay, so it'll be docketed with the board in time to be considered in the context of the next budget?
That's correct.
Chair Steinauer, Commissioner Newman, that is correct. We're anticipating to have that docketed
Okay.
in the next April or May.
Okay. A couple of other items to follow up. Telecom standards with respect to appeals. Do you know when they'll be available?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Newman, those are part of the ordinance amendments that'll be part of the long-range planning program. So they're not on, they haven't been pulled out to be separated from our ordinance package that we'll be bringing forward.
Okay. I'm referring,
I'm sorry.
we've already passed them and the Board of Supervisors has passed them already with respect to the small cell.
Oh, the changes in the ordinance. I thought you were talking about the design guidelines that would be following. Okay, so those should be in effect inland, in the inland area, and then the coastal, they'll be submitted to the Coastal Commission for their action.
Okay. So the department has guidelines now that have been promulgated. My recollection of the amendment to the code was that the director has discretion to grant requests subject to appeal, but there were to be standards promulgated
Those are
by
the
the department so to guide both the issuance by the director and also the appeals that might come before us. That's what I'm referring to.
Right. Madam Chair, Commissioner Newman, that's what I thought you were referring to.
Okay.
And those have not been initiated yet. We're still in the process of working through our long-range work program and trying to accomplish the tasks that already have been assigned to the department.
Okay. Is there
But they
any-
will be worked into the program.
So we'll see those this year?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
I'll have to get back to you.
All right. Additionally, this is a year when the Miramar is going to be coming before us with the first annual report. And do we know when that exactly falls?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Newman, I'll have to look into that and let you know when we think that'll be scheduled.
Okay. You know, given that that's going to be of major interest and import, even if it's several months out, if we could put that on this projection report, I think that would be useful both to us and the community. And then, if I may, with respect to the nets, I understand that as director within the scope of your authority and the emergency provisions of the county code, you extended the permit for another year. What is exactly going to the Board of Supervisors? I'm unclear about that.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Newman, when the department issues an emergency permit, they're required to report back to the Board of Supervisors that we had done so and what the emergency permit was for.
Okay. So it's a report item.
Correct.
And additionally, if I recall the code correctly, within 90 days of the issuance of the permit, an application is required to be filed? And can you tell us about the status of the application?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Newman, as I said, the development plan application was submitted at the same time as the emergency permit was submitted, so we have that application.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then three other items that are referenced in the long-range plan. Maybe we'll talk about them at that time, but one is ADUs, second is short-term rentals, and the third is gas meters, all of which affect our planning area. It's just said they'll be taken up in 2020 without specificity. Is there something we can discuss about that now, or would you rather postpone that to the discussion of the plan?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Newman, I think it's best to discuss that in the context of the long-range plan, but I do want to let you know that as of January 1, the new state law for ADUs is in place in every jurisdiction in the state. And so we are in the process of developing guidelines for how the department will be processing ADU applications to ensure we don't run afoul of state law. And then we will follow on with amendments to the ADU ordinances so that our codes will be consistent with the state law. But in the interim, we will be following the state law because they mandate that.
Okay, thank you.
The other items I think are best discussed in the context of the long-range plan.
Sure. And then one last item, before this fiscal year runs out, Mr. Wilson informed us that our dreary surroundings here were going to be freshened up, that there was some budgetary money for that, as I recall. Is that the case, and where does that effort stand?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Newman, there aren't any plans in this fiscal year to make improvements to this facility. They are discussing about improvements to the media equipment that we have. There are talks about the future of this room, but nothing has been settled at this point.
Commissioner Keller.
When you mention media in this room, there have been numerous complaints about sound and audibility of the Board of Architectural Review meetings. Is that a specific item, or is it in general that there's going to be refurbishment?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Keller, it's in general. I mean, I don't know that that item has been specifically identified at this point in time. We can certainly forward it. It would be a program under general services that would be upgrading this room. But there are issues with the telecasting, and we need to come up to speed with the new technological requirements for that. So there's a variety of things that would be addressed in that upgrade, but I'd have to look into whether or not what's happening with the BAR and the ability for people to hear.
Thank you. I only mention that because people have complained to me
Sure.
about not being able to hear, and I would like to have that at the top of the list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. As far as the item that Commissioner Keller just brought up with MBAR, and the only way you can participate is either in person or via audio, and audio, listening to them, which I have many hours of tapes. It's impossible, and it is a community concern. And if there's a carve-out in the budget, this has been asked year after year after year. We have the room, and we have some video, some setup that could accommodate parts of it, certainly not the overhead with plans like the city has. But it would be most helpful. You can't get up and look at the plans very easily because it's just a table that's full of the members, and it's an important part of this community to know the projects that are going forward or proposed at MBAR level. So I would encourage, I think there was a cost estimate at one point about the upgrade would be, yes, Mr. Wilson, do you remember that at all in the past? Like 15,000 or something? Okay, so maybe someone could look into that and report back. Would be very helpful if you could have a cost estimate. I have spoken to Supervisor Williams about this, and he was hoping there could be, because he has heard this also time after time after time. This is an important decision-making body, and we should have the updates appropriate so the public can both watch streaming and archived. It's very helpful to the community. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Kupiak.
Much as I would wish that MBAR were streaming on television, even short of that, just to have a video recording that could be posted somewhere that someone could tap into. There are more questions that come out about that, and I think, having served on MBAR, the dialogue that goes on there about community projects tends to be pretty in-depth, and I think, it would be very instructive to the community about what's going on if somehow they had access to, a recording of that meeting. It's pretty critical.
Thank you, Commissioner Keller.
Oh, just to drive the nail in harder. It's not only a community service, but as Commissioners Chair Senauer said, frequently for our work, in order to review what's coming before us, we need to have that information. And if it's not accessible to us, it's also a real benefit for our decision making. So thank you.
We'll appreciate you getting back. Thank you. Any other questions regarding the director's report, et cetera? Comments, thoughts? Seeing none, we'll to the project status update. Thank you.
Chair Senauer, if we can just trail this, I think it's packaged in the debris
course.
flow presentation.
Of course, thank you. So moving to the standard agenda, item number 1.
Chair Senauer, sorry to interrupt. If it's okay with you, I'd recommend if we could make some changes to the order on the agenda. I see the
course.
fire department has arrived, or 2 representatives from the fire department.
Of course.
If we could have that presentation first, then we can move to, on the first item, make it second.
Thank you. Did the commissioners agree with that? Is there any? Okay, great, thank you. Please. Could we have the representative?
well-
Thank you.
While the fire department is getting set up, I'll just read it into the record.
Thank you
real
very
quick.
much.
So the Montecito Planning Commission received a report from the Montecito Fire Protection District regarding recently adopted amendments to the district's fire code.
Thank you very much.
Copy that.
Greetings, welcome. Thank you for coming. If you could basically introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm happy to be here and present our update to the Montecito Fire Protection District Fire Code adoption process. My name is Aaron Briner. I'm the Fire Marshal at Montecito Fire Department. I've been with the district about 15 years. 2 years ago, I moved off of an engine and headed up our FEMA Cal OES reimbursement process. And then a little over a year ago, I moved into my current position as the Battalion Chief Fire Marshal. And I currently oversee the Fire Prevention Bureau. Real quickly, I'm just going to go through my team. Without them, we wouldn't have the current code and that we have. So I'd be remiss if I didn't speak to that. Alex Brumand is here today with me. He's my assistant fire marshal. He oversees everything that I don't want to do, basically. And then in addition to that, he oversees our whole permitting process. So our fire protection certificate application process and condition letter from start to finish. So all of the construction projects that go on in the district, he manages and ensures that the code is applied appropriately. Dana St. Oger is our engineer inspector. He just started actually last week in this position. He performs all of our occupancy inspections. So the annual inspections of the hotels, schools, churches, residential care facilities, he'll go out and ensure on an annual basis that they're complying with all of the code requirements. Maeve Juarez and Nick Elmquist come to us both from the Los Padres with combined almost 50 years of fuels management and Forest Service experience. They are our wildland specialists and in charge of all of our weed abatement process, our defensible space surveys, dead tree removal programs, our neighborhood chipping programs, as well as our fuel treatment network in the upper high road areas above 192, and are responsible for continuing the work over the last 30 years in that fuel treatment network that provided us the successes that we saw in the Thomas Fire. So all of them an integral part of my bureau and of this code that I'm going to talk to you about today. So just a brief background on fire codes. The International Fire Code is what we call the model code. It's what all of our codes are built on. It gets updated every 3 years based on industry standards, recognized good practice within the industry, and then input from agencies such as ourselves and State Fire Marshal. The State Fire Code is adopted by the State Fire Marshal and basically takes that International Fire Code and applies the features of California that require adjustments or amendments to address specific issues that California sees that maybe aren't addressed in the more broad international code. And then moving on to the local code, all local jurisdictions perform their own code adoption as well, amendment, taking the local climatic, geographic, and topographic features in their area, so in Montecito, and ensuring that we have the relevant codes necessary to mitigate the risks in our jurisdiction. So we have the international, the state code, and then the local code. Every 3 years, this process occurs. So the 2016 California Fire Code was superseded in 2019, starting January 1st, 2020. So in July, I was given the amended California Fire Code so that we could work to create our amendments for the local code. Went through that process. December 23rd, our Montecito Fire Protection District Board of Directors adopted our ordinance amending the California Fire Code, as well as the California Building Code and California Residential Code, creating the Montecito Fire Protection District Fire Code. As I said before, I'm new in the position, so 6 months into my position, I learned that I was going to be doing code adoption, and so I immediately reached out to all of the other fire marshals and fire prevention officers and brought them all together basically to ask a bunch of why. Why do you do this? Why do we do this? Why are we different? And it, in the end, I obviously learned a lot, but there was some other benefits as well, and that was to help standardize across jurisdictions. Where I didn't receive a good answer to my why were we different, then I changed and created a more consistent code that was useful for everyone through the whole process, ourselves included. So when contractors came in and Carpinteria and they had a completely different set of rules and standards, compared to Montecito, I tried to limit those two areas where we had specific needs in Montecito that needed to be addressed. So that was the goal, was to simplify, make more consistent with the surrounding jurisdictions, and then to just have a collaborative working relationship with the surrounding jurisdictions. These are a few of the significant code changes. So California Fire Code from 2016 to 2019 had 167 amendments. So we needed to review all of those, ensure that we either agreed with them or we wanted to further amend them. We had a total of 17 amendments in our Montecito Fire Protection District Code, and these are the 4 that I think were the most impactful. So fire apparatus access roads, we updated the access road design. Essentially, our previous code in 2016 delineated the width of fire access roads based on number of parcels. So a single parcel was 14 foot wide, 2 to 4 parcels was 16 foot wide, and so on. So in discussion with some of the surrounding agencies, they had already, and so we added the verbiage dwelling unit. So we have now a single parcel or dwelling unit is 14 feet wide, 2 to 4 parcels or dwelling units is 16, and so forth. And the reason to capture that dwelling unit is that the idea is that when you have a single parcel, in general, they have a single permanent dwelling unit with one family legally able to reside there at any given time, and so that's the life load that we're looking at. With the addition of more permanent residential dwelling units on single parcels, we recognize that we were expanding that. Our life load was expanding. We had difficulties with access and egress, and so we needed to adjust that required width. Automatic sprinkler systems, another area where I was able to kind of come in alignment with our neighboring agencies and simplify our process. So for all new 1 and 2 family homes, the requirement is to sprinkler them within the fire code. So when you make alterations, additions, remodels, it gets a little more complicated, and each jurisdiction handles that process a little differently. So our calculation for triggering sprinklers was a little complicated, and so I wanted to simplify it so that it was straightforward, everyone understood. I can't tell you the number of times we had just calls asking for us to explain, like, how can you please tell me, here's my project, is it going to trigger sprinklers? So this seems pretty straightforward. If you alter, and an alteration is an addition or a remodel, 50% of the existing gross square footage of your home, or you reach the amount of 1,500 square feet, then it will trigger a sprinkler, fire protection sprinkler requirement. Emergency and standby power systems. This is a section that wasn't even in the 2016 California Fire Code. It has to do with the power walls, the backup battery power walls that are becoming commonplace in residential dwellings now. So it's in its infancy. It's going to be something that we're going to have to keep our eye on as the technology improves and changes. So a lot of residents are opting for a battery backup instead of a generator backup, and that just creates different problems. Generally generators are off-site in their own location or in their own structure. Battery backups can be put anywhere, really. So it brought a lot of questions, more so than answers. So this was an area that we're highlighting, and we're going to continue to keep an eye on over the year to see if we need to continue to make changes. Explosives and fireworks was just something specific to Montecito where we added language based on direction from our board of directors to prohibit any fireworks displays in the fire district. In addition, just to keep in the theme of simplifying and consistency and making it easier for our constituents and the contractors and developers, we created development standards which help those individuals, the planners, the architects, and the homeowners in understanding our code and applying the code. So essentially, the ordinance is the requirement, tells you what your minimum distances are and when sprinklers are required. These development standards explain how to achieve that. So it's kind of a layperson's explanation of, do you have questions about the roofing assembly? What constitutes a Class A roofing assembly or Class B? You can go to our development standards and they walk you through that. So these are the areas that we felt were the places where people would have the most questions or that were the most complex. Our vegetation management standard was developed by Maeve and Nick, our wildland specialists, and it addresses the landscape plans, the defensible space requirements, and everything having to do with vegetation management around the structures. Fire department access is where it would describe what I described earlier, the minimum widths for particular driveway or the slope, what the material is necessary, bridges, gates, everything surrounding our fire department access. Water supply and storage has to do with our actual fire district water supply for the fire sprinkler systems, as well as if there is an adequate Montecito water supply through the hydrants, what type of storage is necessary. And then the fire sprinkler systems, residential, commercial, describes the structure, the system, how it should be built, what our testing process is for it, and our review process. Post-disaster rebuilds is a section that is actually pulled out of our fire protection plan from last year, and it was implemented post-T-fire to essentially assist residents in getting back in their homes as quickly as possible. So obviously it's a different circumstance where they didn't choose to perform an addition or a remodel to their home, and so we afford them some variances where we can with the current required code in order to accommodate getting them back into their homes as soon as possible. So in conclusion, we successfully adopted a code. I was proud of that, my first code adoption. Hopefully it'll all be as smooth next time. We were able to simplify our code, make more consistent with surrounding agencies with that collaboration that we performed, ensuring that the residents of Montecito have a code that best serves the community. So this is on our website. You have access to our ordinance, which is our adopted fire code, as well as all of those development standards if you have questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Keller?
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that comprehensive report. And I do have a couple of questions. In terms of consistency with surrounding areas, I'm just wondering if within Montecito, where the topography varies enormously from the coastline to the hillside, are there any ordinances that apply differently depending on the area of Montecito? Or is everything the same for the entire fire district?
So good question. It's essentially the same. There's very high fire hazard areas and high fire hazard areas that fall within the county, and that's actually all of Montecito. And so that would affect the vegetation management and defensible space features. But the short answer is access and defensible space and everything is applied consistently throughout the district.
Thank you. And in terms of the sprinkler system, I've heard of a number of instances where somebody who's putting in an ADU was also required to add sprinklers to their main house, even though no construction was being done. Is that an anomaly, or is that something that might be required if, in regard to the ADUs that are coming up the pipeline?
So I can't think of a case where we would require sprinklers to be installed in a main residence because of the addition of an ADU. The state's very strict on what we can and can't apply and how we apply our code to ADUs, and we're very limited in that. So our code would not require a main residence to be sprinklered for the addition or construction of an ADU. So I'm not
Okay,
sure.
this was maybe just an anomaly. Thank you. But on the battery backup, is that generator or will that also be solar?
So it can be both, and I've seen both. So however, sometimes it is both. Sometimes we have one residence with generator and photovoltaic feeding that battery backup. So it runs the gamut. It's really kind of in its infancy, and so you'll see both of them. Generally, I would say it's solar to battery backup.
I beg your pardon?
Generally, I see more often than not it would be solar to the battery backup, but I've definitely seen generators to the battery backup.
Okay,
as well.
you just mentioned generators, so I was wondering about solar.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then lastly, is there, when you talk about the prohibition against fireworks, is there any kind of waiver or exclusion for fireworks that are offshore, that are in the water, or is it, how is that regulated?
So there is a process that the state fire marshal approves to go through fireworks displays in any area within California, but we have no waiver now. The direction from the board of directors of Montecito Fire Protection District was to not allow any fireworks displays onshore or offshore.
So you can prohibit offshore as far as you wish then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I believe Commissioner Newman was.
Thank you. First, I too thank you for coming today. This is a topic of importance to us and to our community. A couple questions. With respect to the fire code changes, my understanding generally, based on my meeting with the chief, is that some of these changes exceed the requirements of state law. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you share with us which ones those are amongst the few that are listed?
Sure. So all of the ones that I mentioned up there before, those four exceed state laws. I would have to.
Okay.
It would take me a little time to completely answer yet. But essentially, any amendment that we put through exceeds state law.
Okay.
So that's the answer, I guess. All 17 of our amendments would alter, adjust, or exceed state law.
Okay, thank you for that. And just as a matter of curiosity, in the deliberative process by the Fire Protection District, I understand you had 2 meetings, one in November and then one in December to discuss these. Was there any discussion about the cost impact of these code changes for instance, with respect to a residential property?
We did do our public noticing and had 2 public meetings. We received 3 public comments from the building official, none of them related to cost. I don't know that Montecito Fire doesn't charge fees, so there's nothing that we do that would have affected fees in that respect. So cost specifically as it related to the changes, I don't know that we discussed them. I don't think that many of the changes were of a magnitude or of a substance that would affect cost. So to answer your question, not specifically.
Okay. And then asking you to venture into Never Never Land with this a bit, because we're there too. With respect to ADUs, do all of these code amendments, the 4 listed here, obviously putting aside explosive and fireworks, apply to freestanding ADUs?
No, they don't. We're, like I mentioned before, we're very limited in our application. So we can't require sprinklers in ADUs unless they meet some other, for some other reason. For instance, if they can't create the access that we require, or they don't have the water flow that's required, then we can require sprinklers in those. But so no, they're a special case and they're dealt with separately.
Okay.
If the main residence, so it works the opposite of the example you described, Commissioner Keller, is if the current residence is sprinklered, then the ADU can be required to be sprinklered, but not the other way around. Okay. So there are a few ways that we can do it, but they are treated special, and it's very, very specific and limited what we can apply.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, with respect to the development standards, which you list here and are intended to help the community, contractors, and so on to understand more the desires of the fire district, are these advisory commentary, or do these development standards have, in the eyes of the fire district, the force of law?
No, they have the force of law. They're actually adopted by reference through our ordinance.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Kupiak.
So just out of curiosity, because I want to cherry pick just one thing. Sure. So the development standard that affects roofing assembly, how does what you've done differ from what the requirements are under the CBC, California Building Code, as far as what's a Class A assembly?
Sure.
Or is there a higher requirement for fireproofing roofs than CBC requires?
So good question. It's we're not doing anything to adjust the definition of a Class A or a Class B. It's just when it's required. So we don't allow Class B roofing. Santa Barbara County does. So Montecito will only allow a Class A roofing type. And then the only other change we made was you can go up to 50% repair of your roof without having to change it into current code, Class A or B, whatever it may be, and we lowered that to 25%. So once you exceed 25% of a repair or an alteration to your roof, then you have to change out the whole roof to the current Class A requirement.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you again for your excellent presentation. I have a few questions.
Okay.
Regarding solar, what purview do you have does the fire department have when a project with a re-roofing, say, wants to usher in the solar? I believe, too, architecturally, it's required by the state that new builds have solar. Do you know about that?
I don't know the answer to the last question.
Okay.
Your first question, we have limited say and concern over the installation of solar, especially roof-mounted PV systems. So the California Building Code, essentially, we've worked hand in hand with Building and Safety to ensure that the placarding and notifications on the panels, that's really our concern, are adequate.
Oh.
So we don't actually even review.
You do not, okay.
Roof-mounted
Okay.
photovoltaic systems unless they're tied to an ESS system, we do review ground mount PV systems that are greater than 20 kilowatts. But that's essentially to ensure we have access. That they're not putting it in a place where we wouldn't be able to access the building.
Thank you. Regarding the power walls and the battery packs and they're being installed
Correct.
all over the place. And basically oversight is nil at this point, is that correct?
It's limited. Building and safety has oversight and ensures that the, if there's a bollard, if they're placed inside of garages, they have the bollards that we look at the same power shutoff. So it's just the technology is even in its infancy. So it's hard to even develop, standards and requirements in a technology that's so new.
So if it's after the fact, if the house is an older house and the installation is a permit required from?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
permit for?
It is permit required.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you. I have a question about the address number on a street.
Mm-hmm.
It's to be, I believe, 6 inches. You have the requirements of, but there are many residences that have none. And that is of import, from my discussions with the fire department, that it be displayed properly. But yet probably 50% of the houses in Montecito have no visible address that you can see from the street. Is that a concern? Have you ever tried to sort of knock on doors or send letters saying it must be displayed because
Right.
it's just, I'd say 50% don't.
So it is of concern. I hope it's not quite 50%. And coming off of an engine, it's something that I apply my code accordingly. It's easy to recognize sitting from the captain's seat what I needed. I need an adequate turnaround. I can't actually turn into this driveway. Where is the driveway? Where's the address? Which one are we going to? So I share your sentiment. It's there's a lot of things to do. So we capture that with every permit that comes through. It's on our checkoff list. So anyone who pulls a permit that we actually
Right.
go review, we do that. But as far as initiating that,
Right.
we don't have a program or process to do that.
Could you put it on your website, a reminder?
Of course.
A display of your address is important critically to public safety and in the community as well as your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a goal of putting out like public service advisements, which talks about clearance around hydrants,
Yeah.
addressing,
Yeah.
just kind of a low, down and dirty
Okay.
development standard. So yes, it's a great idea.
One more question regarding private roads and rumble strips or bumps. As I understand, that's a carve-out. They can do on a quote private road those things, whereas on a county road, like in front of my street, it's even though they speed, bumps are not rumble strips, but cannot be instituted because the fire department believes a safety issue as far as them responding. Is that
Sure.
correct? They are not allowable except on private roads.
I don't know that I would say they're not allowable. I'd say all traffic calming devices are looked at on a case-by-case basis, but in general, a delay in response time, if any type of traffic calming, whether it's bulb outs or speed humps or any of those that you'd mentioned, delay our response, and when you have a 40,000-pound vehicle, we essentially have to stop at each one of those things and go over. So it's a balance. It's a balance between the safety of the neighbors and neighborhood with the speed that's going through there, and then a delay in our response time. And I guess we take the stance or I have historically in general, of not supporting those because I know, well, again, we work with traffic engineering. I'm on the traffic engineering committee, and we address each one individually. And if there's information that they can present, and they always do a study in those areas, and if there's excessive speed, excessive accidents beyond the norm, then we would support some sort of traffic calming. But without that support, then in general, we err on the side of a delayed response is known, and it would be detrimental to the community, and so we would oppose those traffic calming devices.
Thank you. Commissioner Boliche, you have a
Yes, I'm
question?
sorry I didn't ask earlier, but I wanted to ask you, you made reference to the width of roads in relationship to size of parcels or the quantity of parcels from 14 to 16, and and I imagine that might affect turnouts and abilities to pass. Do you differ with the county with this regulation?
Yeah, the county is actually more strict. So they just adopted all of Appendix D, which allows them to essentially have 20-foot fire access roads. So I'd have to look at what their driveway widths are. I'm not sure what it
Right.
is. But we're in alignment with Carp Summerland now as far as our widths. But I don't know what Santa Barbara County's specific driveway width ordinance is.
Okay, and one more question. So do you have a distance or a length of road before you have a turnout that allows for passage of vehicles or your equipment?
Yes, we do. So
And what is that?
Every 200 feet, we have a required turnout, and every 400 feet, we have a required turnaround.
Wow, okay. That's different than the county.
That was different from the county.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other comments, thoughts? No? Thank you so much. It was an excellent presentation. I would like to say, I think it would be appropriate and informative if we could have the website. If you could, is the website here?
Yeah, the website.
As you say?
That's the link to our.
Okay,
our
and the
ordinance.
general website to be informed about board meetings, et cetera, is just montecitofire.com.
Correct.
Okay, and monthly board meetings, all that, committee meetings. It's very important for the community to be dialed into that. And I think often it's one of those departments and agencies that somehow just doesn't get attendance at these things. The other question I have is, there has been discussion about a possible microgrid at a development starting at Fire. I'm not sure. Can you, at the building, or do you have any information on that?
I have limited information on that. I know there was a discussion about the microgrid and incorporating the water district and the fire district, as well as Montecito Union School. I don't know where that's at. I believe, well, we are moving forward. We have to replace our generator post Thomas Fire and debris flow, and as part of that project, we are incorporating solar into that. I don't know if it's going to be part of the microgrid project, but we will be adding solar to our facilities. So,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. My pleasure.
Commissioner Newman?
Thank you again, and if I may address staff on this topic, if it is not already there, and I don't believe that it is, I think it would be a wonderful addition to our county planning site to have the Montecito Fire Department's link to its code and requirements posted, so that those seeking to develop or explore the possible development of properties in the Montecito planning area could also be advised at the county website of the additional requirements that the fire district has imposed. I think that'd be a worthy addition to our website if we can accommodate that, please.
Seeing no more questions, comments, or thoughts, thank you very much.
You're very
Appreciate
welcome.
you
My
coming. It
pleasure.
was very
Thank you.
informative. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just one quick recommendation is, I see there's a lot of people for public comment. Probably want to open it up for public comment.
Yes, thank you. Public comments, anyone? Seeing none, close public comment. Thank you very much.
No public comment.
Moving forward, the agenda. Yes, thank you. We're moving, let's say that. Standard agenda, 2019 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report. I would like to just, before you start, please, there was a reversal of pages in the packet we got, and it was just the 3 punch holes were reversed on page 3 and 4. So when you read it, it just jumped around to page 4 instead of 3. So page 2, So I'm just saying needs to be reversed. If you're I'm sure that will be addressed here, but it was just a matter of putting it together where it got reversed. So page 2, 3, 4, and 5. I just reversed, yeah.
I went through the notice.
Okay, thank you. Please, yeah. Thank you.
Have you read it?
Before our long-range planning staff begins their presentation, let me just read it into the record really quick. All right, thank you. Staff is requesting that the Montecito Planning Commission receive and file the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report, and recommends that the Montecito Planning Commission follow the procedures outlined below in order to provide by April 1st, 2020, the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report to the Board of Supervisors, Governor's Office of Planning and Research, California Department of Housing and Community Development, and the City of Santa Barbara.
Madam Chair, before we begin, I'd just like to take a moment just to introduce the staff that's here.
Thank you.
To my left is Ms. Karina Venegas. Sorry. You know, I was practicing and I just messed up. So anyway, to my left is Ms. Karina Venegas. This is her first time presenting to the Montecito Planning Commission. She's been waiting almost 2 years to come and present to you, and so she's excited for this opportunity. And then we also have Supervising Planner Dave Lackey that's here, as well as the Deputy Director Dan Clement that's here to present this item to you. I just want to introduce the staff to you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. We love to have you. Thank you.
Well, good morning, Chair Sonauer and Commissioners. My name, again, for the record, is Karina Venegas, and this morning I will be presenting the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report. The Annual Progress Report, also referred to as the APR, is a state-mandated report that provides information regarding the status of the county's comprehensive plan and progress in its implementation, as well as the county's progress in meeting its regional housing needs allocation, also known as RHNA, in calendar year 2019. Government Code Section 65400 requires the county to submit the annual progress report to the Board of Supervisors, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and the State Department of Housing and Community Development by April 1st of each year. The county also submits the report to the City of Santa Barbara in accordance with policies in the Mission Canyon Community Plan. The 2019 Annual Progress Report shows that the county continues to make progress in maintaining and implementing the comprehensive plan, especially the 2015-2023 Housing Element Update. The Housing Element contains 37 programs to help meet the housing goals and needs of the unincorporated county. The county made progress towards implementing 3 of these programs in 2019, which are listed on this slide. In addition, Table D of Attachment 1 to the Annual Progress Report provides information on the status of these and other active programs. The county also initiated updates to the circulation element and safety element in 2019. This slide provides a list of projects that the county worked on in 2019 which affect portions of Montecito. Some of the projects noted with CZO only affected the coastal zone portion of Montecito. The Annual Progress Report also summarizes the county's progress in meeting its RHNA for the 2015-2023 housing element period. RHNA progress is determined by the number of building permits that the county issued for net new housing units for calendar year 2019. This includes permits issued for housing units such as single-family dwellings, multifamily dwellings, accessory dwelling units, and agricultural employee dwellings. But it does not include replacement units such as disaster rebuilds or group quarters such as dorms. The Annual Progress Report reports the estimated affordability level of each unit based on the 2019 state income limits, which are adjusted for household size, and based on available local housing data. The local housing costs are researched and estimated by zip code. Therefore, the affordability of most units depends on their location. In some areas of the county, even small units are not affordable to lower-income households. Therefore, the county cannot automatically assume that all accessory dwelling units and agricultural employee dwellings are affordable by design. This table shows the number of building permits that the county issued for new housing units organized by income category within the unincorporated county from calendar years 2014 to 2019. The last row of the table shows the county's RHNA for each income category for the planning period. As you can see, in 2019, the county issued building permits for 242 new housing units, which is a decrease from the 328 units permitted in 2018. The county has exceeded its RHNA for the moderate and above moderate income categories within the first half of the planning period. In that same time, the county has met 84% of its low-income RHNA, but only 36% of its very low-income RHNA. At this point in the housing element planning period, the county should be at least 50% to its RHNA for the very low-income category. As shown in the second to last row, the county has issued permits for 58 very low and 89 low-income units in total. But most of these units came from a large affordable housing projects in 2015 and accessory dwelling units in 2018 and 2019. If the county continues this trend of permitting only a few very low-income units every year, it will continue to fall further behind on meeting its RHNA and remain subject to SB 35, which I will discuss in a later slide. This graph shows the same information as the previous slide. The number of building permits that the county issued for new housing units from 2014 to 2019 organized by income category. The last set of columns on the right shows the county's total RHNA for the planning period, which is 661 units. At 776 units, the county has far exceeded its above moderate RHNA of 284 units. The county has also exceeded its moderate RHNA of 112 units with 274 permitted units. However, the county has only issued permits for 58 very low-income units, or 36% of its RHNA. The county should be at the 50% mark with at least 80 very low-income units. To get back on track and meet these targets, the county must issue building permits for at least 100 new very low and 4 low-income housing units by the end of 2020. Of the 242 units permitted in 2019, 40 were located in Montecito. They included 22 accessory dwelling units, 7 single-family dwellings, and 11 multifamily units. All of the Montecito units were affordable to above moderate income households. The general location of these new housing units are shown as red dots on this map. SB 35 establishes a mandatory streamlined ministerial approval process for qualifying housing developments in jurisdictions that have not met their pro rata share of RHNA or have not submitted annual progress reports. In June 2018, State HCD determined that the county was subject to SB 35 streamlining due to insufficient progress toward meeting its lower income RHNA. HCD will release SB 35 determinations annually in June, which will take into account permit data from the previous year's annual progress report. SB 35 streamlining applies to qualifying housing developments that contain at least 50% affordable units and are located on urban infill sites. These projects are subject to ministerial objective planning standards. To plan for potential development, LRP will continue processing objective design standards for SB 35 projects in 2020. Preparation of the annual progress report is an administrative activity that does not authorize new development or otherwise result in physical changes to the environment. Therefore, the preparation and submittal of this report is not a project and it is not subject to CEQA. To conclude, staff recommends that your commission take the following actions. Receive and file the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report. Determine that the preparation and submittal of this report is an activity that is not subject to CEQA. And lastly, recommend that the County Planning Commission authorize staff to provide the annual progress report to the Board of Supervisors, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, State HCD, and the City of Santa Barbara. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. Commissioner questions. Commissioner Keller.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very clear. The one thing I don't understand, though, is there any penalty for not reaching the arena, for not complying? What is the what is done? How will the community be impacted if they don't reach these levels?
Chair Centerauer and Commissioner Keller, the penalty would essentially be less local control over those ministerial projects and will be continued to be subject to SB 35. I can provide a little bit more clarification and provide a follow-up to that question.
By saying less local control, you're suggesting that projects will somehow be appealed to another level and therefore be allowed, even if they. I don't understand what the downside is, and it sounds like staff maybe doesn't have a clear answer, or maybe you could suggest the process that occurs when we don't meet these levels.
Chair Centerauer, Commissioner Keller, if I could just chime in there at this point. So, as Ms. Venegas indicated, the loss of local control comes in a couple forms. So, for example, she already described to you the SB 35 ramifications of us not meeting our very low and low income categories. That is the RENA numbers. So, the projects which typically would have a discretionary component over them, if they meet the qualifications of SB 35 by including a minimum number of affordable housing units, they get a ministerial streamlined process by which we do not get the authority to exercise discretion when determining whether or not to approve that project. So a lot of things like design control, design review, things like that would go away, or be very limited to the point where it's only an objective sort of consideration. The second effect too is we're now gearing up for the next round of RENA cycles as a part of our next housing element update. Our housing element is going to expire in 2023. So SB CAG is already looking at the numbers that would be assigned to each one of the jurisdictions. The likely result is we're going to have to provide even more affordable housing to make up for this deficiency in our current housing cycle. So there's going to be more requirements, more need for more affordable units at the very low and low income categories, and we're just going to see larger numbers. So it's going to get more and more difficult for us to meet those requirements over time.
I understand your explanation, thank you, but that means that the ones that do include these elements will be streamlined. But is there any way to force projects that do not include these elements to include them in order to be improved? I guess that's the question I was asking.
Actually, Commissioner Keller, could you repeat the question or statement, please?
Well, you're saying,
Chair,
you're suggesting that we lose control that projects that do include the very low and low income have a ministerial approval and are streamlined and sent through the pipeline. I'm just asking if a project comes in that wants to be approved to be built and doesn't include these elements, is there any way that they can be forced to include these elements in order to be approved?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, no.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is, in terms of affordable, this is the SB 35 is statewide. So does it take into account variations in locality in terms of what is affordable? How is the affordability measured?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, yeah, affordability is actually defined as part of the housing element update. That will define the various income categories and what qualifies as affordable and not affordable. And there's a methodology we use whereby we take a look at what is being charged. We do a calculation to see what is considered to be affordable based upon, once again, the various income categories that are established by the housing element update and those various income categories.
I'm sorry, so that means Santa Barbara County-wide, city-wide, is the affordability component for our area? I mean, does it take into account how different that is from Yucaipa, for example? I'm just wondering, it's not a statewide standard, right? Or is it?
Actually, let me invite Miss Jessie Steele to provide commentary. She can provide you a little bit more information, or perhaps Ms. Venegas also could talk a little bit more about the methodology used for determining affordability.
Who wants to go first?
Okay. Good morning.
If you could introduce yourself, please.
My
Thank
name
you.
is Jessie Steele. I'm a planner with the county's Long Range Planning Division, and I've been working primarily on our housing projects. So with SB 35, you were asking if the affordability level is determined at a statewide level or on a local level. Is that correct?
Statewide, countywide, statewide.
Right. So affordability is determined at the local level. So we would establish our income limits through the housing element, and then every year the State Department of Housing and Community Development helps us update those depending on, local variations in housing data, or sometimes they'll just adjust the affordability amounts, but it's usually very little, and they're set within the housing element to start.
Thank you. And so that is countywide.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Newman, you're next. I just want to follow up, if I could. On page 13, it has, of the report, the household income limits, very low, low income, etc. The table referenced. Is that the construct of which we were talking now regarding affordability?
Chair Senauer, yes, that is
Okay.
what we would use to determine affordability.
Thank you. Commissioner Newman, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Going to the staff report first, to page 3, please, at the top. It's mentioned that it summarizes 3 programs listed in Chapter 5, and of course there's more discussion about progress with respect to these 3. Are there any other items in Chapter 5 as to which progress has or has not been made that are not referenced here?
Commissioner Newman, through the chair, yes. If you refer to attachment 1, table D, there will be a list of the total of 37 programs from the housing element, and it provides their status updates as well. Yes, it would be attachment 1, table D.
Just for my reference, and I apologize, I could not read, for instance, these colored tables. Are you referring to one of those, which are completely illegible to us?
Not with the magnifying glass, which I did. Thank you, and I did addition besides. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I would require a microscope.
I apologize.
it-
Yes, unfortunately, that is how the state's Excel forms print, but they are available digitally. But yes, so it is a table D of attachment 1. I can actually just give you a quick peek.
Annual element progress report is the heading.
Yes. Correct.
So these are the other elements of code section and a report on the progress or lack thereof on each of them? Is that the understanding?
Yes, so these are updates to the 37 programs that are in the housing element.
Okay. All right, thank you. Additional question? With respect to, again, staff report, page 3, perhaps I missed it. Could you fill us in with respect to the items referenced in footnote 1, an update with respect to the Coastal Commission?
Commissioner Newman, through the chair. So that footnote was in reference to the ordinance amendments for the coastal zone regarding agricultural employee dwellings that your commission had seen last year. So just this past week, it was at the Coastal Commission. They did approve the board's submittal of the LCP amendments. The next step will be for all coastal amendments. It comes back to the Board of Supervisors to consider the modifications that were approved and certified by the Coastal Commission. Tentatively, we've got scheduled to take that back to the Board of Supervisors on April 7th. And then, as all bureaucratic process happen, there's one final step that after, the board's action is then submitted to the Executive Director of the Coastal Commission. And then at the next hearing, if it's accepted, then it's in place at that time. So we anticipate that those amendments will be in force in the coastal zone probably by May of this year.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me direct your attention now to page 1 of the Comprehensive Plan Annual Progress Report. The third paragraph, fourth from the top or second from the bottom says the MPC, CPC, and board oversee implementation of the comprehensive plan. Could you enlighten me as to how and when we've done that in the past year?
Commissioner Newman, through the chair, management or implementation of the comprehensive plan comes in a number of forms. It can be everything from what we're doing right here as part of this annual progress report to the various programs that are included in the comprehensive plan to implement or actualize the objectives or the goals stated in the comprehensive plan. So, for example, the agricultural employee dwelling ordinance amendments that we just processed, that's implementing a portion of the housing element. That is how we maintain the comprehensive plan. And then also, as you're aware, every year we present the upcoming work program to your commission, the Planning Commission, County Planning Commission, and the board. At those times, you have the opportunity to review our progress on what we've completed, in addition to what you're hearing today, and provide us with guidance about what you believe needs to be in the comprehensive plan for the following fiscal years. So.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. And that is a good segue into my next question. In going through the entirety of the APRs, as you all refer to it in your lexicon, I find that 97% of it, roughly, has nothing to do with the Montecito planning area at all. And I'm wondering if staff could guide us a bit as to those items that are specifically referenced that do pertain to the Montecito planning area. So maybe, for instance, starting on paragraph 3, page 5 of the report. I'm referring to the APR itself.
Commissioner Newman, through the chair, in reference to page 5, you can see on the slide that I have up right now, these are the projects that are within Montecito. And then also the ones that are noted with CZO are portions within the coastal zone. So when you're looking through the APR document itself, it has these projects that are also included on this slide, as well as all of the county-wide projects. But the ones on this slide indicate those that are within Montecito, if that provides a little bit more clarification.
Okay. And thank you. That's helpful. If you could leave that slide up there, that would be useful for our guidance. And let me go to page 11 of the APR. Something that's I don't see listed on your slide 4, but in the second paragraph down on utility scale solar ordinance amendments, it is suggested that the Land Use Development Code and potentially the Montecito Land Use Development Code be amended. What is the suggestion there, and what does that refer to in the context of utility scale solar ordinance amendments, which is not listed on slide 4?
Commissioner Newman, through the chair, so to clarify, so as explained in the description there was a strategic energy plan that the Community Services Department prepared to the Board of Supervisors. And whereas this specific project initially started as just a utility-grade solar ordinance amendment project, after the time at which the board gave us the direction to commence with that project, there was further consideration, mainly in terms of the strategic energy plan, and the board has now given us broader direction to take our energy policies further and not look at just utility grade solar, but then also look at other types of energies. So they've kind of expanded the scope of what they originally intended us to do. And as part of that strategic energy plan, one of the things that it did is it tried to identify generally where the various types of alternative energy production and resources could be provided in the county given the needs and demands of the particular energy development. So as part of that, there were areas identified as potential areas for utility grade solar. Some of those could possibly be located in Montecito or within the coastal zone. But if you read the strategic energy plan, it does caution that, because of, for example, things like the Coastal Commission certification process, it's going to be more difficult or challenging to get things established there. So what we now need to do is go down to a more granular level than what that strategic energy plan provided and look at specific sites that may accommodate utility grade solar. We haven't gotten to that point yet, and we don't want to throw out the possibility that there may be sites, for example, in Montecito or, for example, in the coastal zone, which may be appropriate for what we're considering. But once again, we're not there yet. So that's why we're saying there's a possibility, but we definitely have not identified specific sites, so we're not willing to say it's definitely going to affect the Montecito Land Use and Development Code or the coastal zone portion of Montecito.
I appreciate that. Just by way of follow-up, when you talk about sites within Montecito for solar, are you talking about sites for the county to install, or who would be the installer or owner? Are we talking about private residences? Are we talking about commercial properties within Montecito, governmental, or all of the above?
Commissioner Newman, through the chair, all of the above. Everything's on the table.
So it might be appropriate, would you suggest, to include on slide 4 the addition of utility scale solar ordinance amendments?
Yeah, I should say, Assistant Director Wilson, Secretary Wilson, just pointed out a good point. This is 2019 project, so this is looking back, not looking forward. So although in theory that would have been considered if we actually got to that point in the utility grade solar ordinance this year, but we haven't gotten that far. So.
Okay. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Kupiak?
Having a report like this to kind of understand what's going on countywide is very useful. But, if I want to dial back to what Charles said, just so people have a perspective on really what we're talking about. Very little of what's in this report actually applies to Montecito. I mean, land values kind of prohibit us participating. I mean, I'm just looking at the chart. So of the 40 units of housing that we've produced, all of it is in above moderate income housing. 22 are ADUs, which I think will continue on and remain under the jurisdiction of state code and SB 35 for probably forever. And in terms of the 11 multifamily dwelling units that have been created, I'm trying to think about where the hell they could be. Sorry, pardon me, but you know, living here, I just don't know where multifamily housing happens, and it rarely happens. I don't know how that formula gets changed, even in the perspective of regionally what's close to Montecito. I mean, it's a kind of one clear indicator to me that some of the numbers that we're generating, because I guess one of the questions that I have is, in the very low and low income housing units that have been developed in the county, where are they? And I just want to follow up to that, you know, just so that people have kind of grasp what this means, is that everything that we try to do to build housing that is sustainable and diminishes traffic and brings worker force housing back to Santa Barbara is almost unachievable, you know, within the circumstances that we currently have. So I don't see low-income housing being built in Montecito because no developer is going to do it. They're just not going to make the numbers pencil backwards when they're doing it. I mean, they won't even go for the bonus because it just doesn't make sense in terms of their initial infrastructure costs to build. So I'm not sure how the county creates programs that really incentivizes that, because so far it just hasn't been. Some has happened downtown when, for example, when we're really doing not accessory dwelling units, but adjustable unit density projects, which always have a tremendous amount of consternation in every neighborhood that they get built. But, you know, there's, as Charles said, I mean, this is a fascinating read, but 97% of it doesn't even apply to Montecito. But the where they occur and how we incentivize a good housing mix and how the county participates in that is certainly something that I'm very interested in.
Commissioner Kupiak, through the chair, to answer your question as far as those accessory dwelling units, those are mainly located within the Lompoc